And I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit about Maame, which is your first book. I really like the opening. It's a rather unusual point of view for the narrator who is actually in labor and draws the reader into her memory. I'd like you to share with us first your general thoughts about the book and then what led to the creation of this work.
So, like you said, I grew up in a small community, a village in Ghana, specifically in Nzema. And I have always been intrigued, especially as I've lived in the city in Ghana and then moved over to North America. I have been so intrigued by the resilience, the strength, the sacrifice of those women. And so I knew that I had to write about them, and I had to write it from a perspective of someone who's lived with them, who's grown up, like it's a product of the place, known them intimately, and also heard of them. And I needed to first tell their stories, and also, you know, there's the narrative that comes, especially in the Western media, about the African woman, mostly the rural women, are one of helplessness, of hunger, of dejection. And I am trying here to show them the real African woman. And also, you know, some of us have traveled and our children are losing that kind of connection with the people, where they came from. This is more like a memory scroll for them, so that both my children and other children of African descent, either in the diaspora or even at home in the cities, can connect with the African woman, the rural woman that is like the genesis of all of us. And as these women are dying off, that generation of women are dying off, this is more like my tribute to them. So a lot of things went into the making of Maame.
I want to find out if this is your first book, and if so, what really would you say has been your journey into writing? What has led you all the way to the point where you're able to put out this book?
Yeah, this is my first book, yes. But before then, I like to write a lot. So I used to write letters to the editor. I used to compete in essay competitions in Ghana. So writing has always been there. I put it on the back burner because, you know, you have to make a living and you have to really do other things. But it's always been there, and once I got into it, I felt like I had always done it. In fact, the second one is in the works as well. So, like, writing has always been part of me, just now coming up because now everything else is mostly done. I can concentrate on my true love.
Yes, and we'll actually get into that when we enter the deeper conversation about the book. But your style of writing, I find it extremely refreshing, and even though it is very light and moves very quickly, it actually tackles extremely deep concepts, and so we will be talking more about that after the first few readings. But you mentioned that the story is actually set in Zimaland. I find that many of the places that you speak about are recognizable, but you actually didn't use the real names. So, I mean, it's just a simple thing to guess which city you are talking about, but why didn't you just do the whole hog and put the real names of the cities and the villages in there?
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I did struggle with that a bit in terms of whether to go with the real names or not. Ekonu, I had no issues because I knew that I wanted to showcase the place. It's such a special place, and it has such a special place in my heart. The rest of them, I thought I'd just let the reader, you know, figure it out. But I gave them enough clues for them to know what I'm talking about.
Yes, you actually did. And I also like it that it was very easy to place it firmly in Ghana, so that apart from the fact that there are many recognizable folk tales and proverbs that place it in Ghana, it was easy enough to say that, well, this is Takrady. or so. Yes, but there was one thing I wanted to find out from you. The story actually spans a very long, pretty long length of time. There are
Yeah.
3 generations in there. But if you could help us by telling us when you think the first story is placed in, Ahu's story. In what year or in what century should we be thinking about when we read it?
So it's fairly recent. So when we meet Ahu, she's giving birth to her fourth and final child, and I would place that around the late 70s.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so at least that is a good time marker for us. And I think at this point, we'd like to go into the book. Let's listen to a short reading from Maame, and then from there we can start to interrogate a little bit more what the story says. So for all those who are joining us, I'd like to remind you we are back at the Goethe-Institut with our monthly reading series, and tonight we are talking to Elizabeth Akua Vaah. She's joining us from Ontario, Canada, and we are talking about her book, Maame. So, Elizabeth, if we could take the first reading.
Okay, where are we reading?
Well, I would like you to share with us something from the beginning to put the story in context.
Okay. So I can start from the beginning then. My name is Ahu. This was not the name I was given at birth. Like all girls and boys in my community, I had a name that matched my gender and my day of birth. As a girl born on Friday, I was called Afiba. If I had been a boy, I would be called Kofi. I have another name based on my birth order. As the 5th child of my mother, I am also called Anuni. Nobody calls me by any of these names anymore, except those who are very close to me, and only on special occasions when they want to show that they truly belong to my inner circle. I am told that my father had to wait until I was 6 months old before naming me after his aunt, Maame, because it was not uncommon for babies to die at birth or soon after. Perhaps giving newborn babies a generic name was my people's way of not becoming too attached to them in case they died early. Childbirth in my community is not an easy matter. That is why new mothers are kept indoors until they are ready, when they are brought out with great fanfare. These and other thoughts flood through my head as I lie in this makeshift enclosure of raffia sticks and thatch. This multi-purpose family bathroom serves as the delivery room today. The 2 women guiding my baby out into the world are speaking to each other in hushed tones. I can sense the fear in their eyes as I lie on the raffia mat on the floor. What could be going on? If I focus well enough, I should be able to see the other women running about helter-skelter in the yard. I love these enclosures of raffia sticks and thatch because they allow air to flow in freely, a real relief in this tropical, steamy, hot weather. And they also allow one to peep out and hear everything that's going on. They did hang cloth curtains on the walls to ensure my privacy, but that's least on my mind. Who cares about privacy when I'm going through intense pain with every contraction?
So thank you very much for that opening reading. And this actually is the way that the story opens. And I really found it unusual, the memories being brought in while somebody is in labor. And why did you choose such an occasion to start telling the story, for the narrator to recount all the story? Why did you choose it to be at the point of childbirth?
Yes, so you can see that one of the key themes running through this book is about childbirth and about motherhood, and even the title is mother, right? And so childbirth is uniquely feminine. I think I don't know anywhere any other people group or any other group of creatures that have someone else other than the female giving birth. And so if I'm writing about motherhood and I'm writing about these women and what it is that held them together, the instincts and all of that, that it just felt natural that I would start there. It's unusual, but it fits really perfectly.
And I must also say that there are many, many themes and issues that you tackle directly in this book. And of course, there are some which you also tackle peripherally. But one of the major themes is child marriage. And of course, I think that it is a really difficult thing to think about, but you actually show us in many different ways the kind of impact that child marriage had on all practitioners. In fact, the impact was across everyone in the society. Now, I would like you to tell us, through the lens of the writing, through the lens of this story, what are your personal views about child marriage?
About child marriage. So we have to look at it from the society, right? Whether by design or by choice, they don't call it child marriage. In their view, right? Once the girl once the girl has the puberty rites performed, she is deemed to be of age and ready for marriage. In some cases, actually, even the mother or the people who love her are going to be the ones that are scouting out to see, who are the eligible people that this girl can be married to. And to them, it's like a sign of good parenting if you have a prominent person coming to marry your daughter. So that's the context in which one has to look at it. Although for me personally, I would say that there's no way a girl or a young woman or whatever shouldn't be going into marriage until they've been able to, they can be independent. They've been able to learn skills or ways through which they can be independent of whoever they are going to be married to. Whether they are going to marry young or they are going to marry later in adulthood, they have to have that independence. And definitely, it shouldn't be by force, either by coercion or by force. It has to be something that they are comfortable with, and the person they are marrying has to be someone that they are comfortable with.
And I just want to read a line from the book. When Ibella is being asked more or less, so the marriage was being arranged for her, and she actually was more interested in someone else, and she had this dream. And I think that these words, "Papa, please, I love Mozu. Please do not refuse his proposal. I love him so much. He is the one I would love to marry." And these are her words. This is what she really wants to do. And society didn't agree. Her parents didn't agree. And everything went the other way. Of course, I mean, this makes it rich for storytelling. But if a person puts themselves in the shoes of this young lady and the kind of consequences that this marriage led to, one agrees that it is not a very comfortable situation, to say the least. I want to step a little way away from the child marriage thing and talk about religion, because it also plays a very strong role in the society. And you highlighted all sorts of aspects of religion. Some of them were really quite humorous. And then there is this priestess who is larger than life and who seems to actually run things in the village. I mean, when someone is sick, she's the one, she does divinations and all that. And you also speak about the possessions that she goes through. So this suggests to me that you are very well versed in the religious tradition of the Nzima people. or did you have to do extra research to get us this clarity?
I did read a bit around it, but I mean, until like during my childhood, we had a garden, right? And there was this priestess whom I tried to describe in detail in this book. So that is something that was very, very common in most in the rural areas, in the villages. And she was like, she sometimes a male too, so she or he was like your present day pastor, right? They were the ones that communicated with the gods and told you what the answer is. On Fridays, they would be like, there would be a whole, you know, what I described, the drums playing, the whatever, the beating that, and she would be in a trance and she would be manifesting in different forms, telling people what the issues are. So it was something that was very, very prevalent. So I describe those as both as some who had seen that as a child and read about what it is that goes on in some of those gardens. They call them gardens, yeah, but then that's what happens there.
So this priestess is really very powerful. But I also note that when you do start to speak about Christianity later in the story, it's almost with a tinge of irony, you know. The people, they go to church because it's there, but when really they need something, it's right back to the priestess. You know, the priestess has this part in their lives. And do you feel that this is pretty much the same with in today's Nzima, in the life of Boma, the girl who is actually living in the present generation? What role do you think religion would play in her life as compared to what happened in her grandmother's time?
I think to expand it a little bit, I think the African is generally, what do you call it, polytheistic, or whatever that word is. You know, we believe in more than one God, and even within that society, right? Although they believe that there's Nyame, we see Nyame as the head, right? But below him are the rivers, the hills, the forests, you know, and each of those are supposed to be deities of some sort that need to be revered and respected for the sustenance they give us, for you know, the provisions and all of that. And even now, like personally, although I have gone through the born again kind of process and all that, now when I look at it, right, as somebody who is very, very concerned about the environment, I feel that if we held on to those, we probably wouldn't be doing what we were doing to Tano and all those beautiful rivers, because our people saw them as gods and providers, and so they revered them, they respected them, they took care of that. In the modern day, yeah, a lot of us have, you know, seen the light and seen God and moved there, but do we really take good care of His creation, the sort of things that He's put at our disposal? No, we don't. So, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. You know, what I was thinking about when you were answering is the other side of you when it comes to your environmental activism. You know, I've seen a few posts and some emails protesting more or less the damage that is being done to the environment as a result of Galamsey. You know, so I can tell that even outside the book, this is something that you feel very strongly about and are working towards. Now, you know, there's this question. Maame is a really very refreshing read. The descriptions are spot on. You brought a person into the story very well. So much so that halfway down the line, I felt I really had to ask you this. It's really said not to be a very fair question to ask a writer. but how much of this story, you know, is drawn from your life experience? It's really very, very rich. How many of them are the characters, people that you grew up knowing, etc.? Tell us a little bit more about the creation of these characters. whether they are from your experience of life.
Yes, like many of these characters are from various years of experience of either living among them or being with them or hearing about them, right? I write about what is it? Like going to collect periwinkle snails, or going to the sea and going to the where the fishermen are drawing their nets and collecting fishes from them. That's something that I've done as a child, and so many children in the town did and continue to do. I talk about what's the name, the puberty rites. I had my own puberty rites then. It was just that I didn't have to, do that with nothing on. So I've gone through all of that, and I've also seen, I've seen my grandmother describe it, and this Nana that I talk about, she's somebody that's so dear to my heart. And I use her to showcase the sacrifice that our women in those days and hopefully still do, they do. After living outside, you can see that in so many cases, you need the paperwork, you need to, if your sister passed away and you have to take care of the children, you need to adopt and go through all of that. But in this case, Nana and my own grandmother did that. I understand my actual maternal grandmother died at birth, and that was her elder sister that left whatever she was doing and just became a mom, right? So those qualities and those things, especially now as I've lived elsewhere and I've sat down to look at it, those are some selfless acts that just need to be brought out and celebrated. And you and I, so many of us have mothers who, even when they didn't have any education, or they don't mind selling their last cloth to use that to pay for, Kojo's school fees or Ama's school fees, just so that they will be better than they were. It's all over. The Aso, for instance, this is a woman who gives off her very best, hardworking, industrious, and then, she has misfortunes and she has to, continually wonder whether someone's going to tag her as a witch or what. So it's all over, and it's all both within that place where I lived and grew up, and all over rural Ghana. It's everywhere. So I had a lot of material to work with.
Yes, and some of the other things which maybe we will touch on if we do have time is, include polygamy. You actually talk a lot about polygamy and also the raising of children in the village setting. But at this point, I want us to look at folklore. You enrich the story so much with folklore. There are some of the stories which are recognizable, and I just want us to take a look at one which reminds me of a tale from Amos Tutu's My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. And this is when a girl from the village follows a man purportedly to the next village, and the man leads her into a forest, and it turns out that he's a python after all. I mean, at the end of it, maybe if you could give us a reading from that section so our listeners can have an idea of the extent of folklore that is in this book, Maame. And we will be taking questions. Elizabeth Akua Vaah is going to be able to take your questions. So you can send questions in via whichever way you are joining us. If you are here in person, you can actually raise your hand. We'll send a microphone to you. If you are following on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, or even on the Zoom link itself, you can send a question and Elizabeth will address it.
Okay, let me add. Okay, so get started. So I would have married someone in Akonu. I would have preferred to have married someone in Akonu. Samboma was not too bad either, except that girls in Akonu did not like to marry strangers. And I put strangers in inverted commas. Who in Akonu did not know the story of the young woman who went away with a stranger and almost never made it? She was a very beautiful girl and refused all suitors from her own village, and even the neighboring ones. Simple and learned, rich and poor, young and old, she refused them all. Neither her parents nor anyone else could convince her to accept someone. She became known as a snob. It turned out that a python heard about her and decided to teach her a lesson. It changed itself into a handsome young man and visited her village. He met a girl at the edge of the river as she was drawing water. She was so smitten by his looks that she accepted to marry him right away. She could not wait for him to pay her bride price. Her parents advised her to wait until she knew more about him, but she refused. When they would not accept her bride price, which he finally offered because it was too low, she threw the money at them and ran off with him. As they journeyed through the forest, the path kept closing behind them. They walked for 3 days, during which the nice and handsome stranger changed completely in his behavior. He would not wait for her to catch up and only responded to her with grunts and monosyllables. The farther they journeyed, the more irritable he became. On the 3rd day, he stopped by a small stream and asked her to wait for him. When he emerged, he was not a handsome young man she had followed, but a mean-looking python. She was terrified, but there was nowhere for her to go. The python started to whom she had previously refused to marry. He was in the bushes nearby when he heard her screams. He helped her to get back home, where she narrated her scary ordeal to all.
And so that is a bit of folk tale from this story. One of the things which I felt bad about was thinking about myself and the fact that these sorts of folk tales do not come easily. One would have hoped that our society still had imbued in it this sense of folklore, so you can actually just tell somebody a little bit of folklore and folk tale. And I love it. I love the fact that the story is imbued with these things. And there are certain writers, African writers, who make it a point to bring in these elements of tradition into their works. And I don't know if you have any of these writers who may be an influence or who maybe you love to read.
The writers who influenced me. So the one writer I always go back to is this man, Yao Boateng. His book is called The Return. I don't remember him using folklore like this, but his style of writing and what that book, I think I read it in class 5, and it still stuck with me. I cried a lot when I read it, and I got my own copy, which I almost always refer to all the time. I love his style of writing. So he did influence me a lot.
I want us to take a step away from the story itself and look at language. You have put in a lot of songs, some incantations, poems in the story that are in Nzima. So I believe that you probably are proficient in the language.
Yes, I am.
So the question really is, would it have been possible for you to have written this story in Nzima and probably later have it translated into other languages like English? And I was thinking about whether this would affect the flow of the story, how a person would relate to the story. So in terms of language, would it be more natural for the telling if you had written it in Nzima?
I think the flow would be similar because I tend to think in Nzima and then translate into English. Okay. So it would be similar. Even when you look at the songs and all that, and the translation of it, you see that it's almost along the same lines. I started reading in the Bible like in class 4 or something until I left for secondary school. I was the champion reader in my village. So yeah, I'm quite proficient in it. I would love that we can get this translated, but I wanted a story, to be available to a broader population. So starting it off in English is a good starting point.
Yeah, and then also this brings to mind the question of writing in Ghanaian languages and the whole idea of people losing touch with their mother tongue. I mean, you mentioned that you were reading Nzima from very early on, and there is somehow a very strange perception amongst many people that starting off with a Ghanaian language and becoming proficient first in a Ghanaian language will somehow damage a person's ability to function in European languages or other languages. What's been your experience? Did it help or did it hinder your Nzima background, your reading Nzima early on? Did it help or did it hinder the English proficiency?
I think it helped, and even well-established educationists, they do advise that people get trained in their first language, because that comes natural to you. Now it's like trying to climb something. You have to stand on something to be able to climb, right? You can't be in midair and expect to be able to move up or down. You have to have a base, and so when you are that steep in the prominent language around you, in your local language, it gives you enough flair to be able to then venture into other places. Personally, I find that it has helped me a lot. Like, I'm able to think of these proverbs and all of that, and it also expands your vocabulary. Like, it makes you more versatile.
Thank you for that. And now to characters. The characters in here are really colorful. There are some who are larger than life, and even though there are many characters that are worthy of note, for some reason I just kept thinking about Uncle Mieza. I mean, he is really very funny, and I would like us to take a reading from that section, but I just want to say that if the man comes out of his room and announces to a young girl who is staying with him, this is what the Lord says, and you must eat fish for the next 3 or 4 days. You have to eat all this fish until it's finished. I mean, that character really is very fascinating for me. Let's take a reading from that section so viewers and listeners can actually have an idea of what we are talking about. And there are some copies of this book. This is a book we are talking about, Maame. There are some copies of this book here at the Goethe-Institut. And as I mentioned, we can take some questions. I can see that there are a number of chats available on the Zoom, so we'll look at them and see if there are questions for you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, sure. So where did you want us to start? With Uncle Mieza?
Yes, let's start from where the young girl found the dead bat and then had to try and sort out meals for the family.
Okay, so one event would always stick in her mind. It was a Saturday morning. She had finished her chores and was playing outside outside with the bed when she saw something that looked like a bed stuck in the electrical lines on the poles in front of her house. It did not move when she tried to get its attention. She realized that it could be dead, so she went inside to inform Uncle Mieza about it. Using a long stick, they were able to get it to the ground. It turned out to be a large bat. They started throwing ideas about what to do with it. Neither Bomo nor Uncle Mieza had eaten bat meat before. Her uncle related to her the biblical story of the Israelites being provided with quail for their meal. Uncle Mieza knew the Bible from beginning to end. In fact, every possible frame on every door in the house was covered in biblical verses. That morning happened to be the one when he had said that he had no money for food. When school was in session, he would be served food from the dining hall. One of the students was in charge of taking his plate to the dining hall and bringing it back with food. During the vacation, they had to cook their own meals. It was no coincidence that he saw the dead bat as providential meat for the day. Bomo did not know how to prepare, but she had assisted her mother when she cooked chicken for special family dinners. All girls were expected to know how to cook, and she did not want to disappoint her uncle. So she went ahead with preparing the bat soup. She took the bat, cleaned, and cut it up. They did not have any of the ingredients she needed to make the soup, and so she asked her uncle for money to go to the market. So I'm going to skip a few things. And then she gets to the market and realizes that there was more fish at the seashore. Unlike the canoes in her village, the fishing boats here were large and powered by outboard motors. She was surprised at the sheer number of such boats carrying loads of various types of fish. She used half of her money to buy fish, very pleased with herself for what she thought was a great bargain. She proceeded to the main market and bought the ingredients she needed for her soup. Because she had spent half of her cash on fish, she could buy only small portions of the soup ingredients. When she reached home after 3 hours, and with great excitement went in search of Uncle Miezan to share her good news, to her surprise, Uncle Miezan was livid. Why was she late? Why did she buy fish when she had not been asked to? What did she intend to do with the fish? Bomo did not know what to say. She had not expected such a reaction. Her uncle withdrew to his room for what seemed forever, but he returned to the kitchen finally. Bomo, he called her in a stern voice. Yes, uncle, she responded. Here is what the Lord says. Since you went out of your way to get fish when you had not been asked to, you will have to eat the fish until it is finished. This also means that you will not have any of the bat soup that you will be preparing. While she was relieved that she wouldn't suffer any real punishment for her waywardness, she was sad that she did not get to taste the bat soup. For the rest of the week, she ate steamed fish, fish soup, fish stew, fried fish, and smoked fish.
That is what the Lord said. You know, so this was one of the characters I was wondering whether he was real, you know. I would find it hard to imagine this character. There is a question from Peach asking via the Zoom, and he or she is asking, what are the things I need to consider or think about when writing books? So maybe you can, let's save this question for a little later so that I can ask one more question from here, and then you can tackle Peach's question. Just as a follow-on to the question on characters, if you were to choose one of the characters in the story who you would think is the best representative of the entire story, who would you choose from the story?
Best representative of the entire story. I like to think that would be Ahu, because you know she's seen life from the way it was, right? She had certain expectations that as a girl, this is the most I can get to, and so let me do my duty, you know, and then get done with it. But then when she meets a circumstance that gets her questioning some of the things that she has accepted, she doesn't just take it and sit there, right? She does something about it. And through that, she's able to change not just the fortunes of her own family, but then by letting her daughter get to the way that she got, she's coming back to this society and probably give Princess Yaba a run for her money. But so I think she carries the community, and she is like the bridge between what was and then what becomes of these women in the society.
And indeed, she is the principal narrator of this story.
Yeah.
So if we look at the society which you describe, I get the feeling that there is some sort of nostalgia about the kind of society, the village life, the rustic life, the simplicity of it all, you know. And when you look at the society that you describe and the kind of society that pertains, I mean, in general, in Ghana and maybe where you live, do you think that there are elements of that society in the village that are notable, that are best preserved, and we shouldn't lose them? You did mention something like the reverence for nature, which it seems to be lost now. But are there some other things that you think are worth preserving from the early society that you describe in the book?
Definitely. They say that it takes a village to raise a child, right? And so in that community setting, everybody's child is everybody's child. So your child goes out to go play. You're not worried because you know that if there's something happening, someone will take care of it. If your child gets in trouble, and he's the one, or he or she is the one causing the trouble, he or she will get rebuked, and someone will take care of it. So that community, that readiness to step in and help one another, that is something that we must never lose, because especially having been out here where because at least the government system works, the public system works, so it helps out a lot. But you don't really have that personal touch. I don't really know my neighbors a house or two from here. That you don't want that kind of situation. You want to be able to feel that you are in a community that looks out for one another, and especially until we get our public sector in a way that it's responsive enough to take care of what it needs to do. Our ability, the smaller communities' ability to be there for each other, is something that we have to really hold on to.
Well, great. We are actually approaching the final moments of this reading, and so we can take some of the questions that have popped up. So there's this one, I read it to you earlier. Peach wants to know what are the things that they need to consider or think about when they are writing stories.
Yeah, so I would say you have to believe in the story that you're writing, right? Something that you are creating. You must believe in it. You must love it enough to be glad to share it with someone. That is the critical thing. And then you also, when you've written it, it's always good to have people to read through. I worked this through with my editor, and he helped me bring out things that I had taken for granted. There were things that I thought the reader should know, but he's like, no, you have to take them on that journey. So he helped me bring things out that I would have taken for granted. When it comes to looking for who to publish, that kind of thing, I tell you, in the writing world, you just have to accept that rejection is a form of life. You can get rejected like 100 times. It's just because your book hasn't met it hasn't found its home. If every book has its home, every creative work has someone that relates to it and it would want to help you make it better. So you have to keep at that and keep searching to find the right people or the right place for it. But yeah, you believe in it, you're able to defend it and why you think it's going to touch someone enough to want to buy it. Then that's a good starting point.
And when you mentioned the thing about rejection being part of the writing process. I just wanted to find out how long did it take from completing this manuscript to getting it published?
It took about a year and some months. So I did the initial shell of it, and then kept polishing. And then when I thought it was ready, I started sending it around. But most of them thought, it's good, but we don't do that kind of stories, you know. They have a certain things that they're looking for. But I still wanted to tell these stories, so I kept looking. And then once I found these publishers, they were like, how soon can you bring it? So then I sent it, and then we started working through the editing process. So that was the whole thing took about a year and a half.
You know, I find it interesting because the publishing house is Mawenzi House Publishers Limited, and the story is so African that when you speak about the story finding a home, I think actually the home for this story is where it's set. It's here. It's in Ghana. You know, I had no problems at all relating to it, but I suppose that if it's a foreign audience might not know what to do with this type of story. So I really was happy to learn that you are making arrangements for this book to become available in Ghana. I highly recommend it. This is Maame, and we have a few copies here, which I guess we are going to sell off by the end of the evening. But I would like to see if we have any other questions. Are there any questions perhaps from the audience? Okay, and not from the online stream either. So
in fact, when you talk about here, 2 days ago I had my company's book club with its risk management. It's like 80 people in the book club, and we went through it, and they were so intrigued. So I think they love it a lot. Like it was so interesting. They had questions coming from all angles. So
wow,
it was good.
Yes. So before we go, I'd like you just to tell us a little bit about your work with the environmental activism. I know also that you run a foundation. I think of it more as a motherhood foundation, but it's something that is related to helping mothers through childbirth. So tell us a little bit about that foundation, the Vaah Foundation, and also a little bit about the work you do for the environmental activism.
Okay, so I'll take the environmental activism first. Like you can see throughout my book, River Mansley is always, it's always on my heart. Every time I see a picture of it, I'm just done. So then I saw a picture of the, what do you call it, the Abe Lagoon over in Jewewa, and it made me cry. And since that day, it's like 2 months ago, I saw that picture. I haven't rested. That is what drove me into all of this. Like, how can we sit there and allow this to happen? We shouldn't, because we cannot replace these things. These are more than the money. Whatever money we think we're going to get from whatever actions we're doing, they cannot take care of one kilometer of those rivers that we are wasting away and we are destroying. So yeah, that's something that I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to drop it until we actually get the message and change this. It doesn't help us. It's unfortunate that our desire to, you know, I don't know if our now moving away from our traditional beliefs has anything to do with it. But if that is what it is, we are worse off than we were before. Now, when it comes to the foundation, it was something that I had to do with my family, because I came to have a baby in Ghana. Like, I have my first 3 children in Ghana, and everything went so well. I don't have any issues with it. But then last time I went to have a child in 2009, and I almost lost my life. And it wasn't because, you know, this was a dilapidated hospital with no what do you call it? With no equipment. There was everything, and yet it was a mess. So that was what drove us into setting up this foundation. Then we realized that, oh, people go through all of this, but they can't talk about it because it's like, oh, if you talk about it, you won't be able to have any more children, or they would even say that it's the mother-in-law, some elderly woman sitting somewhere who killed your baby, when actually you know what happened when you went to the hospital. So the foundation is to give these women a voice, and also to make sure that when these things happen, we probe into what's behind it, and then hopefully get some of these institutions to change their behaviors. Recently, whenever we go home, we do like a community health check, health screening, and those kinds of things, just to help also the women, the people in those areas, to take care of their health and be mindful of like taking good care of their health. So that's like I've been into these advocacy things because, like, some things cannot just be left and then be given to God and no, it doesn't have to be like that.
Well, thank you very, very much. This has been a really engaging conversation. We were talking about the book Maame, and I think it's just around 8 o'clock, and so it is actually time to be winding up. Many, many thanks to you, Elizabeth Akua Vaah, for this conversation. I am anticipating sometime down the line that you will be in Ghana, and perhaps we can have a sit down and probably another meeting. And may I give you as much encouragement as I can for the next book. I hope it's going to be as exciting as this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And for all those who have joined us in various ways, I mean, we have tried to make this multi-modal in terms of how you could join. If you joined by Instagram, by Facebook, or by YouTube, I'd like to say thank you very, very much. We really appreciate your joining us. And also for those who kept the faith and came in here physically, thank you very much. And we will meet next month, where we have actually 2 readings. We are going to have a new series which is dedicated entirely to poetry, and for the prose part we actually have a surprise. If you are not on our mailing list, get in touch with us. We'll put you on our mailing list and you will really enjoy next month's readings as well. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.